What program used to start with that? Live from?
Yes, a lot of
Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night Live, okay. See, I very rarely am up late enough to ever have watched that, so. Okay. Okay, now I put the clicker down. Where did I put it? Okay. Holy moly's. We're ready to roll. Are we?
Yeah.
Okay. I am. So, business auto questions, pretty much I received from y'all, and one thing at the end that I didn't, or in the middle somewhere. Uninsured and underinsured motorists. Important coverage, correct? Is it used as much under the business auto policy as it can be used under the personal auto policy? So, especially when you got a fleet of vehicles, should every vehicle have high liability limits? I mean, UM and UIM. Obviously, they should have high BI and PD. I'm going to take that out because I was talking about something, then I decided not to put it in here. But when I talk about personal auto, whether it's the rest of the real world or Massachusetts, to me, UM and UIM is very important. Whatever they buy for optional bodily injury, I think they should have the same for UM and UIM. And then there's the business auto policy. And some people say you don't need any limits at all, and other people think all of your vehicles should have the same limit, and I think I need to discuss things with you. It may be yes and maybe no. So I can't give you a no, never, and yes, always. For me, personal auto, yes, always, part 3 and 12 equal 5, and 5 should be wicked high. But should UM and UIM under the business auto necessarily be wicked high? I need to know more about you. I actually might have to have a discussion with my client to find out what's going on. I just can't say yes or no. Well, certainly, it is written the same way, but because it's written the same way, I can't necessarily sell it the same way. And this is UM coverage from the business auto policy by endorsement, the Massachusetts language, because we have our own. Every state has their own UM and UIM language, because every state thinks they know how to write it correctly. We're the best. We used to write it well, and then we screwed it up in the 80s somewhere and separated out UM and UIM. That was a bad idea. But I was an ass, so whatever. Like the personal lines, UM, who's an insured U? Okay, that's great. But if U is a thing, what is you going to get out of UM and UIM? So if the business auto policy is issued to an individual, then you need high UM and UIM. You really do. If it's issued to a thing, well, maybe not so much. Because when you look at the rest of the definition, and the personal auto lines has the same language, my UM coverage, it starts out saying, yes, it will cover other people in the auto, great, but then there's more words, personal lines and commercial lines, and it says, we will not pay damages to or for anyone who has a mass auto policy of his or her own. So we kick everybody out that has their own mass auto policy, or who is covered by any mass auto policy of another household member. So if I have a policy in my name, I have to buy my UM/UIM regardless of what vehicle my butt is in. I drive a company car. It's got high limits. Well, great. Y'all got a policy in your name. You ain't never getting the limits of the vehicle you're in. Or if a family member has one, then you can't have the limits of the vehicle you're in. That's just the way it works. So commercial lines and personal lines works the same way. And the underinsured motorist endorsement, again, will boot me out if I have a policy in my name or there is a household member providing UIM coverage, which we'll talk about that in a minute. So, to each their own. Everybody in the household has their own personal auto policy. You all buy your own UM and UIM. I don't care what vehicle you're on, you have to deal with it. Because we're always going to kick other people out. But when the business auto policy is issued to a thing, things don't get injured, and things don't have family members. But could people occupying the MEI vehicle access the UM and UIM limits? Maybe, but not if they want. have a policy in their name or a policy in a household member's name. So if all these vehicles are mine, do I really want to spend the money for the same UM and UIM limit on all those vehicles? And now I have to ask you, so who's in the vehicles? Because, that could be a lot of money. That really could be a lot of money that is never going to be utilized at all. And if another agent comes along and says, yeah, I can save you some money. How can you save me money? Well, let's look at this. If you've got a fleet of 100 vehicles with the combined single limit liability and UIM about the same. And I can tell you that that's a waste of money and you are never going to access it. Then your insurer's not happy with you. You've been cheating me all these years, I want my premium back. Well, life doesn't quite work that way. So, Jack Spratt owns a vehicle, number one, with UIM limits to $500,000. Corporate president is in the vehicle. Will the corporation owns a vehicle? Will the limits respond to him? I don't know. My first question is, well, it's the standard answer in insurance, it depends. I can't ever give you. Insurance will love that. Is there a personal auto policy in Jack Spratt's household? Because if the answer to that is yes, no, the limits are never going to apply to him, never. If he's the only one that ever uses them, then I'd say, what's the point of spending the money on the limits? I can spend money on other coverages for you. I can add other endorsements, I can sell you other policies, but that wad of money was a waste of money because it ain't never going to pay out the way Massachusetts writes its UM and UIM coverage. So I need to know that. And even if there's no mass auto policy in the household, if when Jack is in the vehicle as corporate president, but it's registered to the corporation, if he's acting as an employee when he's in this vehicle, the UM and UIM will not pay out. And it's not because there's an exclusion, because there is no exclusion for workers' compensation under UM and UIM. There's a coordination of benefits language, but it is not there's no exclusion in the policy. But we had some fine companies in Massachusetts contest that. And in a couple of mass court cases, it was determined by the Massachusetts Supreme Court that when an employee is in the corporation vehicle and working at the time, then what kind of a claim is it? Workers' comp, and workers' comp is the sole remedy by virtue of the employer on behalf of the employee. And the business auto carrier and the business auto policy is not obligated to get involved. That was Mass Supreme Court. So my husband, before he retired, who worked for the electric company, and like the line trucks, only ever had employees in them when they were working. So those vehicles would not need high UM and UIM, because if you're only ever working when you're in them, those limits, at least if it's a Massachusetts corporation and the accident is in Massachusetts, will not pay out. And that wasn't the only court case, because you might get around one, but there was another one. Berger versus Hood, and again, the business auto policy or the carrier of the employer is not responsible. So as an employee, I drive a company car. If I'm on my way to the convention, if I'm on my way to teach, that for me is working. The second I leave my house in the morning when I get in the car, because I go to different places. If I get injured, that's a workers' comp claim. So I don't really care what the UIM limits are. If I get injured in Massachusetts, that court won't demand that the employer pay, that business auto policy pay. So again, that was a Mass Supreme Court case, started in Superior. So if only employees are in them and only while they're working, it's a waste of money. It's a waste of money. So, exclusive remedy. If the accident occurred in a state other than Massachusetts, might the employee be able to access the UM or UIM limits, depending on whether they're injured by an uninsured motor vehicle or an underinsured motor vehicle? Maybe. I mean, I don't know. because each state will have its own decision on that. We know the Massachusetts decision, but if I am an employee that can be in a company car outside of Massachusetts, it really doesn't matter what Massachusetts says. I remember reading a court case. It had nothing to do with this, but it was a Florida court case, and they brought up that a New Jersey judge had ruled differently. And it's like Judge Judy. You think I care what they say in New Jersey? We're in Florida now. We're in my court. So that's never a good way to make a judge happy. So I don't know. So that would be a reason why maybe you'd want to research that. UM and UIM, and this is similar to the national way of saying it. I've taught personal auto in a lot of states, and generally the commercial auto, UM and UIM, read the same way. Workers' comp is not an exclusion. We're so used to every policy we sell having a workers' comp exclusion except the workers' comp policy. UM and UIM don't expressly exclude it. They always make it a coordination of benefits because workers' comp pays what? Medical and weekly wage. And if that's paid out by the workers' comp carrier, then we would deduct it from any UIM award. Then it goes back to the state. Are we going to make workers' comp sole remedy or allow the injured employee to do other things? So I can't speak for other states, but I can tell you Massachusetts, it's only a workers' comp claim. So that would be, a reason, especially if you don't really go out of state to not and only have employees in it, then what's the point? Now a lot of people might have personal use too. So Jack Spratt might be the president of the corporation, but he doesn't necessarily work 24/7. So he's not doing anything work related, taking his kids to the ballpark, and a vehicle rear ends him. Could UM and UIM then apply? And it could. So, which of this fleet of vehicles, were assigned to particular employees, and do the employees have personal use of these vehicles? Because if they have personal use of these vehicles, then UM and UIM could come into play. And do you care? I mean, as the corporate president, the other issue is always, do you care? But, from the business auto policy standpoint, corporate offices are merely employees. They're just better paid ones than the rest of the slugs that work there. So, if you don't want high coverage, then you're an employee too, so, you're taking care of yourself. But if I have a personal auto policy in my name or a household member, I can't access the coverage. If I don't, then I could. If it's a not work-related claim, I might be able to. Or I might ask, okay, so you're a Mass employee, you got a personal auto policy in your spouse's name. Who else is in this vehicle? Do you bring clients to the vehicle? Do you, do things with other business partners that aren't employees? In which case, if you were in an accident and they got injured, would you want UM and UIM to be there for them to access coverage? That could be. But again, I'd have to say, who are these business partners? What? Oh, yeah. Okay. I gotta interrupt my thought process. I might never get it back again. So, those of you that are out there in video land, this is your first of 2 CE check-ins. You minimize the screen, type in your name, then you get a little thank you, and then you come back to me. There we go. Hey. Okay. Now I go back over here. Oh. Okay. So, all right. So where was I? Oh, yeah. All right. So business partners. If they're Massachusetts people, then if they have a Mass auto policy in their name or in their household, they can't have your UM/UIM limits. They have to go back. And when you drive down the highways and byways and streets of Massachusetts, you see a bunch of cars and driveways and parked on the street. I know coming off a Store Drive to come up to get here, there's cars all along the way. And I think, why do you have a car when you live here? Because where do you put that critter? You have to fight people to get a parking space. So there are a lot of people that have vehicles in this state. So, but if they're Massachusetts people and there's a policy in their name or in their household, they can't have your limits. That's the way it goes. So again, okay, well, my business partners are all Massachusetts people, so residents probably, I don't care. So it's a lot more limited as to who my UM and UIM is going to pay out. Anybody that has a mass auto policy in his name or her name or household, and then no employees while they're working. So that fleet of 100 vehicles that might tone down to just 1 or 2 vehicles that have key employees that have company cars assigned to them that also have personal use of these company cars. That takes your premium and brings it down to just a couple of vehicles. Well, the company won't let me do that. Well, you didn't ask, did you? I mean, really, what's the point of having these limits on all these vehicles that they're really not going to pay out? And I know some agents say, I have asked, and the company has done what I asked. So, I don't know. I can't say a yes and a no. So again, I've been in a class, well, I don't think you should ever have high UM and UIM in a business auto policy. I cringe. Or, I think you should have all the same limits, and I cringe. I think I need more of a discussion. So, reasons. No, I get personal use, no company cars. I have passengers in my vehicles that might not have a mass auto policy. Or the last reason is, your question I might hear from your daughter, somebody, maybe Jack Spratt, he's got a company car assigned to him because he's the president and he can make those assignments. There's no personal auto policy in his household, so he should have a driver of the car endorsement for himself, shouldn't he? I mean, should I be, if I'm selling you the business auto policy, checking out to make sure that the key officials in that business have a personal auto policy in their household, and if they don't, should I not suggest that there be a driver of the car endorsement for these important employees? I mean, I don't care about everybody, but president, vice president, key employees. In which case, the DOC, driver of the car endorsement, we have our own in Massachusetts. It's not that different than the one in the rest of the real world, but it's mass mandatory or massive mandatory 9922. It takes the coverage from the policy it is attached to. If I have only 2040 UM and UIM on the business auto policy on all the vehicles, I can't then say I want 500,000 a million UM and UIM on this endorsement. It doesn't work that way. If I have vehicles with differing limits on the business auto policy for the corporation, then of course when I ask for this endorsement as an agent, I'm going to be very specific about what vehicle limits I want to apply to this. Of course I want the UM, UIM, the high limits that might be applicable to vehicle number 3 to drive this driver of the car endorsement. So the name and should be Spratt Incorporated, name individual, Jack Spratt. We don't show limits here, we only show premiums, but my request to the company is based on the highest limits available. And I have that in writing just to follow it up. So therefore, he could have higher UM and UIM. He's got no mass auto policy in his name. When he's walking down the street and gets whacked by an uninsured motor vehicle, which does happen, then he could go back to the DOC. If he's on vacation and gets injured in an uninsured or underinsured motor vehicle, he goes back to the DOC. So there are a few reasons, but again, I can still argue that I don't want high limits on your fleet of 100 vehicles, depending on the actual exposure that you have, because it can drive up the premium, and then people look at me. I mean, for the most part, people think they spend way too much for something that does them no good at all. Is that not what they think about insurance? And they don't realize that insurance is very valuable, but sometimes we do pay more than we should. So. And certainly the driver of the car endorsement is helpful to Jack and his spouse, should he have one. They'd get liability coverage when they're driving vehicles that have nothing to do with the corporation, and medical payments, if there's medical payments on any vehicle, and UM and UIM, again. So I can take the highest limits. I might not even care about medical payments on all of my commercial vehicles, because the medical payments in the business auto policy pretty much say they never pay medical payments to employees. So again, if only employees while working are in the vehicles, paying for medical payments endorsement is a waste of money because we don't pay medical payments to employees. That's what workers' comp is for. So, but if at least one vehicle on that fleet has them, then I can say I want that to apply to the DOC. If at least one vehicle on the fleet has UM and UIM of high limits, I can say I want that to apply. And again, I can have collision and comp apply. So there are some reasons. Yes, ma'am.
And it doesn't matter which vehicle it's on, as long as
No,
it's on one.
I just, I will identify it just to cover my own little E&O butt, right? I asked, we've got it on at least one, those are the limits, and you would then adjust the premium for that. So, and this is really to cover Jack when he's in non-corporation vehicles.
Right. So in this case, it could apply to, say, a president of a corporation who lives in Boston who doesn't have a car,
Right.
but have a company car.
Right, it definitely needs this.
Right.
Every household should have auto coverage of some type from somewhere. And DOC is better than a named non-owner policy because the named non-owner policy only lets you buy liability in UM and UIM. This will let me have collision and comp too. But when I'm doing non-business activities, going on vacation, borrowing friends' cars. So, but I've never had a company that, some people wanted to then put their kids on DOCs. Well, maybe a company will say no mas there. But for employees, old, adult employees that have decent driving records, a company shouldn't worry, not want to do that for me. So that's my answer, and I'm sticking to it. Now consider years later, Jack's married. I got little Munchkin here, coming around and decides that it's not a good idea to have Munchkin drive a company vehicle, which I highly agree with. Just to keep the company from being at risk. And then Jack talks to his lawyer who gives him very bad advice. The kid is young, got nothing to lose. All he needs is state minimum limits. And that is the worst advice in the world, and I've had people tell me that that's what their lawyer has said, and I say, tell him to put that to you in writing, because it will make suing them so much easier. If you have low BI, you have low UM and UIM. Whether it's business auto or personal auto, you can't buy more UM and UIM than you buy bodily injury. And now the way it's written, poor little Munchkin, no matter what vehicle he's in, he's relegated to just those UM and UIM limits. But unfortunately, he sucked Dad into this mess too. And the DOC will not be available to Jack and his spouse for UM and UIM anymore, because the language in the policy as well as the endorsement says you have to go back to a household member vehicle. So as the agent, if I know there's a driver of the car endorsement for one of the business people, I have to be careful about if we insure the household, about somebody else in the household getting a personal auto policy, we need a meeting of the minds between and the commercial department and the personal lines department. Other than that, it's an E&O claim. And I still need a meeting of the mind. I might, do you get to know your clients a little bit? Not that you want to know everything about them. But if you've had them for a few years, you know Munchkin. And Jack has mentioned Munchkin's on the baseball team, and Munchkin's, in high school. Well, Munchkin might be driving. If you don't have the personal lines business, I might want to put it in writing. Oh, by the way, should Munchkin get a vehicle? I should check to make sure if there's a vehicle in the household and I have a DOC, it might be redundant to begin with, but you have definitely screwed up the UM and UIM. If Munchkin has a vehicle, those BI and PD limits would apply to mom and dad, but so would the DOC. That's not the problem. It's UM and UIM is our problem, the way we've written it. Once there's a policy in the household, you can't ever have the UM and UIM of the business auto policy of the DOC.
Even if they have nothing to do with the kid's car, like their name's not on his policy?
Even if they have nothing to do with the kid's car. The way we wrote our UM and UIM talks about you first must go back to a policy in your name. If you don't have one, then you must go back to a policy in a household member's name. And that's defined as related to you and living in your household. Can Jack still use the DOC for BI and PD and collision and comp? Absolutely, but never UM and UIM. Never no, no, nay, nay. That's the way we wrote it in 1989. A fateful year when we separated out UM and UIM. So, it's nice he kept UM and UIM high on at least one vehicle to drive his DOC, but the DOC is toast once somebody in the household. So if somebody in the household gets a car, why not bang up that vehicle with high BI, high PD, high UM, high UIM, and save yourself some money and get rid of the DOC? Because realistically, semi-redundant and certainly removes my ability to access UM and UIM. Because that's the way we wrote it. Because it says, we will not pay damage to or for anyone who has a mass auto policy of his or her own or who is covered by any mass auto policy. Again, this only applies to UM and UIM. Not to BI, not to PD, not to MedPay, not to collision, not to comp, but to UM and UIM. And I think of UM and UIM all the time. When I'm driving on 495, 93, 95, 128, and people just feel a need to come speeding up to the back of my car and intimidate me to get out of their way, which I will do. Just give me a chance. So, the only thing that Jack might have the ability to access the DOC for is UIM. UM, no. If little Munchkin Jr. bought 2040 UM, is that providing coverage? Yes. If Munchkin Jr. only has 2040 for Part 12, is that providing coverage to other household members? And that was declared in a mass court, no. 20,000 UM is coverage. Crappy coverage, albeit, but it's money. 2040 UIM, what is that? Nothing. I mean, it doesn't exist. Realistically, so little Jack Jr. or Munchkin Jr. would be stuck with the Part 12 UIM 2040, but the family members would not. But if Munchkin Jr., Jack Jr. bought 5100 BIPDUM, would that 5100 now be relegated to Jack and the spouse? Yeah. So once somebody in the household has a personal auto policy, I want to know what kind of limits they have, because it will affect the ability to access UM and UIM for the whole family. And I might want to give you some advice and say, here, save some money, get rid of the DOC, then put the money on the kid's car and buy high limits, because it's for your own benefit. Because that's the way we wrote it. Now that kid has 5100, that is providing coverage. And what will 50,000 do for Jack when he's seriously injured? Somewhere between nothing and a little bit. I like UM and UIM, and I buy it in my umbrella too.
Your mic's
Nope. Well, since I can't move, how about that? I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
That's good.
Sounds good.
Okay. So whereas I think all personal auto policy should have UM, UIM, I don't know. I need to actually spend more time and talk to you on a commercial policy. Boom. Okay. Okay. Composite rating. Can you do that with car? I got that question, and I'm thinking, I have no idea. I guess I'll ask. And I can tell you, as of this year, the answer is no, because the rule is gone from the car manual. I really never did composite rating. Anybody do composite rating on commercial auto? See, I don't miss it because I don't really know what it does or how you do it, but you ain't doing it on a seated vehicle as of this year because the rule is gone. And if the rule isn't there, nobody has to follow it. So. Okay, I got a question about plowing recently, and people not happy. I can't help that. My insured is going to plow this winter, and it's getting there. Feeling cold out there. Is the plow covered if damaged, and does a client need anything other than a business auto policy? And I can tell you that business auto policy, when they're actually plowing, you have liability coverage, correct? Well, unless you lied to me, in which case then we're in a misrepresentation part of the policy. But, accident, can you create accident? Yes. Covered auto, we do the operations. The problem is the business auto policy has a completed operations exclusion. So when you've plowed that parking lot for Target, and then it ices over, and then that nice old gentleman goes into Target at 7 o'clock the next morning and falls down and breaks a hip and sues, that's not a business auto claim, correct? Because you completed the operation. What kind of a policy do you need when you complete an operation? Your completed operation might give rise to a claim. CGL. Which is easier said than done. Because a CGL policy doesn't like autos either. And never really thought about this for decades. Well, I knew the auto policy, the CGL excludes autos, because it says so. BI or PD arising out of the ownership, into use, or entrustment to others of any auto. And I was emailing with an agent, and he said, well, I've always, kind of like discussed this with my underwriter, and they issued a CGL, and we did a classification. And I said, it's interesting that a classification does not remove an exclusion in the policy. And coverage A is BI and PD, correct? And we don't separate out in the policy operations from completed operations. That's a rating thing. And it dawned on me when I was reading a CGL filing that, hey, even if I have a CGL, I don't have completed operations coverage for plowing, because I don't have auto coverage under the CGL. And way back in 2007, 11 years ago now, ISO created an endorsement, snow plow operations coverage. And you add it, and it just says within the product's completed operations hazard. So this really buys back completed operations under the CGL for the snow guy. And I get an email saying, so, is the government thinking of, doing anything about that court case that happened that took away or gave responsibility for snow and ice? Because we were wacky in Massachusetts for like a couple hundred years. Natural events you're not responsible for, and then that Papal whatever case in Target kind of did that away. And I definitely need to make sure I have completed operations coverage for my snow plowers, because if something happens after they're plowed, could they do a bad job? I remember watching the news one morning, and Dan Ray is standing in the middle of a street that the snow plow stopped, because there was, he's in the middle of the street, because you see the house there and the house there, and you see the rest of the street had snow on it. And he said, yeah, and they said that this street was finished. Not so much. So you left. Could somebody be driving down the road and not expect to, bam, hit a snowbank in the middle of a road, actually, that you left there? And your auto policy is not going to cover that, because you're done your operations. You need commercial general liability coverage. So, and I hear it's not very cheap, but they need it. So there you go. Now back to the plow. Do we cover damage to the plow? Sure we do. Because the business auto policy says we will pay for loss to a covered auto or its equipment. Can we pay loss to that plow even in the summer when a tornado goes and throws it against a tree and smashes it to bits? Even when it's not on the vehicle, does a business auto policy pay for damage to that plow? Yeah, it does. Because there's nowhere in this policy that says it has to be attached. It just has to be equipment of that auto. And by rights, as a agent that's fair to the company as well as to the client, should I have included that value of the plow in the value of the vehicle when assigning the overall value for collision and comp? I think, do I have to? No, but it's easier to argue from the side of right and justice. And then I just, hey, this is what it says, you got the premium, we pay this claim. But obviously it's covered when it's attached, but whether it's attached or not, it's covered. For comprehensive, if you bought comprehensive for that vehicle. For collision, if you bought collision for that vehicle. There you go. In order to get plowing jobs, my client has to sign a contract holding the entity harmless, more so now than ever before. Does the business auto policy honor this? Sure. Again, I've got liability coverage for covered autos. What do I mean? Well, is there a premium, and what's the symbol activating coverage? And generally, when it's owned, what symbol do our companies love the most? 7. No, I don't, but they do, and I can deal with other things on that. And so then there's item 3, and I see that that particular vehicle does have liability. Life is good. And then when I look for contractual coverage, I find it in an exclusion, which the CGL policy does the same thing. We cover all BI and PD unless the insurance does not apply to liability assumed under any contract or agreement. Oops. But this exclusion does not apply to liability assumed in an insured contract. Okay. What's an insured contract? Well, that's a definition in the back of the policy. That part of any other contract or agreement pertaining to your business where you assume the tort liability for BI or PD. You know, the purpose of this exclusion is to make sure that the insured realizes this is not a bond, this is not a performance. We cover BI and PD. And can you assume responsibility of other people while you're doing your business auto operations? Yes. And do we honor that assumption? Yes, if it's an insured contract. An insured contract, this is the same thing we see in the CGL, BI or PD to others. So, I'm all set with that. Renting vehicles. Okay, coverage for the employer when an employee rents an auto. A good lawyer sues who? Everybody. So, I gotta make sure everybody, the employer, is covered. So when an employee rents a vehicle on a business trip, the employee could be sued, the employer could be sued. Where do we find coverage? And you might or might not find coverage under a personal auto policy, but you can definitely find coverage under the business auto policy. And that's the only policy the employer can control, therefore I want to make sure it's covered there. So coverage for the employer when an employee rents a vehicle in their name, or coverage for the employee when the employee rents a vehicle. What am I going to do? So, I already rent a car in my name. We needed the vehicle to bring CIC books up to Montpelier, Vermont. So I rent a vehicle. And I didn't have a company credit card. I rented it in my name. Could MAIA or any employer be responsible for the actions of their employees during the course of employment? Especially since I'm driving through New Hampshire and Vermont, the answer to that is definitely yes. Can we protect the employer from vicarious liability when somebody is doing something on their behalf? Yes, and we definitely should. The business auto policy. Because I can guarantee you my personal auto policy ain't doing nothing for my employer. Well, actually, my mass auto policy wouldn't. I live in New Hampshire. My national auto policy does. But Massachusetts just never put those words in it. Now, under the 2008, you're an insured if you're a household member. Well, my employer is not either of those. Or if they're actually using my auto. And it's been interpreted in Massachusetts to be using my auto, your body has to be in it. So the fact that the employer could be responsible for the actions of my auto does not make them an insured under the mass auto policy. And the same thing under Part 5. And 2016 again, we never changed that. Other people are covered only when they're actually using my auto. So my employer does not get insured status when I'm using my vehicle on their behalf, which actually doesn't bother me one bit. These are the limits for me, but I have to make sure when I'm insuring the employer that they're taken care of. So. And if the employer has a business auto policy, that's the easiest way to do it. If they don't have a business auto policy, do they still need auto coverage? Absolutely. There's ISO created endorsement, the hired and non-owned auto endorsement, to go on the BAP. And I hear some companies have created their own for the CGL policy. Great. That's not an ISO endorsement. It's not filed by ISO, so if you have one, that's great. I have no idea what it says. I can only get a copy of the business owner's one because that's filed by ISO. So I work for MIA, I rent the vehicle for Taurus, vehicles rented in my name. The business auto policy, is it a covered auto? Well, covered auto means show me the number, show me the symbol activating coverage, correct? And so my personal favorite would be symbol number 1. And every time I go to a class or listen to one on the webinar, I say, oh, symbol number 1. Well, in the real world, symbol number 1 doesn't happen very often. Does anybody have a company that will let you activate liability by symbol number 1 on a few token customers? Well, I guess none of your customers are important enough to the company, but that's okay, you know. Same thing in the rest of the real world. I get sick of teachers saying, oh, you should have symbol number 1. Well, it's not that easy. I should, but I probably can't. So if I can't, in this situation, you know, symbol number 1 would say, okay, you, the named insured, the corporation, and then anyone else, while borrowing with my permission, a covered auto. Symbol number 1 would do it, but if I can't do it, I need symbol number 9. Oh, there it is. Only those autos you do not own, lease, hire, rent, or borrow that are used in connection with your business. If I rent a car in my name to do something on behalf of my employer, that's a symbol 9 situation. If I don't have symbol 1 activating business liability coverage, I need 3 symbols, correct? I need 1 for owned autos, which is probably going to be symbol 7. Then I need 1 for non-owned autos, which will be symbol 9. And then I think I need 1 for hired or borrowed autos, which is symbol 8. So if symbol 1 doesn't activate BI or PD for the operations of autos, you need 3 numbers. So the business auto policy is symbol 7, 8, and 9. 7 for owned, 9 for auto non-owned, and 8 for hired or borrowed. When I rent it in my name, it's a non-owned auto to MAIA. When I have an accident with it, what are you doing, Irene? Well, I'm on my way to a CIC for who? MAIA. Great. So I'm going to get sued. MAIA is going to get sued. I can go back to my personal auto policy, but MAIA cannot. My employer goes back to the business auto policy, and they probably have higher limits. Well, not me, but they might have higher limits than the normal employee. Am I insured under the commercial auto policy when I rent a car in my name? And I'm not. Symbol 1 or 9 is for the named insured. Based on the way, you know, the liability definition of insured under the business auto policy, we cover you, the MAIA for covered auto. What's covered auto? Symbol 9. Great. So when I'm using a vehicle that MAIA doesn't own, they now have coverage should they get sued. Who else isn't insured? Anyone else, that could be me, while using a covered auto that MAIA owns. Well, I'm driving a rental car, they don't own it, that MAIA hired or borrowed. Well, they didn't rent it, I did. So I'm not an insured. Symbol 9 does not make me an insured. It makes the employer insured when vehicles are used on its behalf. So whenever when I was an agent, I used symbol 9 or symbol 1, I always added employees as insured's endorsement. Always. Always. CA 9933. I have seen, some of you have sent me the extension endorsements that some of your companies have created, which is great, and I've seen this language in it. But you'd have to look, because I don't look at every, you know, Safety and Arbella and whoever. I don't look at their company-specific endorsements unless you send them to me. So you'd want to see something like this. And now this says, any employee of yours is an insured while using a covered auto. You don't own, hire, or borrow. Yay. And this is rated out of the symbol 9 rating function. It's 25% of symbol 9. Generally, for 0 to 125 employees. And again, under the business auto policy, the president is a mere employee. So I want to make sure that this endorsement is on the policy. Because it's not just the peons that find insured status using vehicles on behalf of the employer, it's the upper echelon too. So to me, symbol 1 or symbol 9 and this endorsement will guarantee that there's liability coverage when a vehicle's used by an employee for the behalf of the employer. And there's a newer version of it, but it doesn't matter, it still does the same thing. Hey, and it's not expensive. Or you could use employee hired autos, but that will only make me an insured when I rent a car on behalf of MAIA. How many people drove their own car here? Are you all doing something on behalf of your employer? It could be construed that whenever you go to see a client, if you're in your car, could you be construed to be doing something on behalf of your employer? That's why this endorsement is important, employees as insured. If that's the only endorsement on the policy, it ain't gonna do you diddly squat. Because this will only make me an insured when I have rented or borrowed a vehicle on behalf. And this will make me an insured no matter what I'm driving, if I'm doing it on behalf of the employer. So to me, I prefer this one. This one, if I had hired auto physical damage, it would allow this endorsement to apply too, but I care more about liability. I know how much a car is worth. I don't know how much a person is worth. And if I'm not an insured under the business auto policy and it has to pay out a claim because of something I did, what could a company do? What does a company always do when they have to pay out a claim? Subrogate. So if I'm an insured, can you subrogate against me? No. So if nothing else, that's why I want this endorsement. I got insurance, but I don't know how much you want. So instead of putting in my name, I get the company credit card. And I talk them into putting it in the name of the company. Yay. Which is a big talk with some rental companies. Okay. You want to put it in your name. No, we want to put it in MAIA's name. That's their credit card. Okay. So now the association has hired the vehicle. Do they have liability coverage if it causes an accident? Well, what symbol do they have? Symbol 9 won't work for them now, because now it's rented in their name. Symbol 1 would work. If not, they need symbol 8 this time, hired autos. So if symbol 1 doesn't activate coverage, I always need 1 for owned and then 8 and 9. And if they don't do it that much, it don't cost that much. It was always, with my clients, hired or borrowed was always on an if-any basis. If businesses routinely rent vehicles, it would be on a gross receipts basis. You'd rate it specifically. But for most of our clients, it's on a if-any basis. Better to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it. And if they're going to argue about $100, do you really want them anyways? They're a business. It's a business expense. Now, when I rent the vehicle in MAIA's name and I'm driving it, am I automatically insured under the business auto policy? Yes, I am. Because anyone else, you covered auto, so now they have symbol 8 or symbol 1, great, they're uninsured. Anyone else, that's me, while using with their permission a covered auto symbol 8 that they hired or borrowed. So when I rent a vehicle in their name, I'm automatically an insured. When I rent a vehicle in my name, I need an endorsement to be an insured. Or if I use my own car on their behalf, I need an endorsement to be insured under their policy. I just think it's interesting. The CGL since 1985 has built employees in as insureds. And the business auto policy never has. Isn't that a little bit odd? You know, why one policy will automatically make employees insured, but another policy doesn't necessarily make employees insured. But it's different parts of the organization. So, okay. Somebody had an accident, and they only had symbol 7 on the policy, on the business auto, and they rented a vehicle, and they had an accident with a rental vehicle, and the company's not paying the liability claim. It's like, well, that's why. If you only have one symbol, it better be 1, and you can only have 1 for liability. All the others, for collision and comp, I'd need symbol 8 also, or a company endorsement. So will the business auto policy provide physical damage coverage for the rented car? I don't know. What's the symbol activating coverage? Probably just symbol 7, so the answer will be a resounding no. This is where your company-specific extension endorsement. Do some companies throw in a little bit of hired auto physical damage? I've seen it. I don't know. It's company-specific. Otherwise, as far as ISO is concerned, hired auto physical damage means symbol 8 is activating collision and comp. That's the way they look at it. Okay. And then what is policy territory? If you go on a business trip, Big I, National, Washington, actually they're in Virginia, but whatever. Would you be insured if you rented a car in Washington, D.C.? Yeah. If you go to London to see Lloyd's, I think that would be neat. Are you covered? Yeah, you are. The business, we have not done that with the personal auto policy, and I ain't holding my breath for Massachusetts to do it. Because even ISO National hasn't done it yet. So Massachusetts, the only country it likes is Canada. But the business auto policy, 2001, 2006, 2010, 2013, anywhere in the world, if a covered auto of the private passenger type is leased, hired, rented, or borrowed without a driver, so I'm renting it to drive it for less than 30 days. Now, the business auto policy is more generous than the personal auto policy. Yeah. Who knew? Life is good. Lots of business income. We kind of talked about this in the commercial property. There's an option under commercial property now. But I get this question, I've got these large trucks, waste hauler, if it's damaged in an accident and they can't haul waste, that's how they make their income. What am I going to do? And I said, well, or contact a Rolls-Royce excavator. What's available? There's always been a loss of use endorsement for commercial auto where you can pick the daily rate. It's not like the personal lines where you get $30 a day for it. You could, if you could rent it and you needed $400 a day, you could buy that. But see, you have to be able to rent the vehicle. And so the insured might need to join some association to make some kind of deal with fellow business people that if something happens to my vehicle, I'd do for you or you do for me. In short of that, if a vehicle is not available to rent, then this endorsement would do you no good. But if you could, what you do, loss of rental and reimbursement, MM9939, you pick how much you need per day. You even pick the number of days. I mean, the rule talks about 30, but if you needed more than that, because you're paying for it. But if what you need is not available, it will do you no good. So, can I get coverage on my commercial property? Well, there is an endorsement now, but unendorsed, my business income coverage does me no good because if the vehicle is damaged other than on my premises, and actually vehicles are not covered property under the commercial property policy, unless I added endorsement, it won't do me any good. But there is an endorsement, just FYI, there is a CP 1506 that would let you do it. Email me and I'll send you the information. But there is an endorsement under the commercial auto policy, CA 9905. It was created by ISO in 2014. It was submitted by AIB for the Division of Insurance and approved for use as of 2014. That doesn't mean a company has to sell it to you, but it does exist out there. And there's two options. You schedule the vehicles, and you show a limit of insurance, so scheduled property, a limit of insurance, that's business income limit, what you think you might need should it get damaged, how long do you think, you should know if you have a certain kind of vehicle, if you had to order another one, how long would it take to get it? If it has certain specialized equipment on it that needs to be put on it again, you should know that about your business. And so you should know how much time and how many jobs you might lose. So it's a guesstimate, but it's your business, you should know that. Not my business, I don't. So that's we're not talking about the damage to it, that's collision and comp under the business auto policy. We're talking about your loss of business income. So you could have multiple vehicles and show a limit for each vehicle for future loss of business income. Or you could have, you still tell us which vehicles you're talking about, but there'd be one limit of insurance, which is always easier. One limit of insurance is always easier. And what's the chance that all of your vehicles will get totaled at the same time? Well, I don't know. Is that tornado going through your property and throwing them all over the place? So there's always that option. So you schedule it. They need to know approximately. Something is better than nothing. That's the way I look at life. How many jobs do you normally have in the future? How long do you think it will take you to get that vehicle repaired or replaced? Something is closer than nothing. Because right now, you got nothing. You're out of business. So they should know and project it. Is it going to be an easy claim? No, but at least they should have records of what they've done in the past. They should have a record of jobs they already have in the future, the things they can't perform. So I can at least buy coverage now. So there you go. And it will start with a 72-hour deductible because that's what ISO thinks should happen. And as always, I need to remove that because how much money can you lose in the first 3 days? A lot. So I always need to remove that. And you can have extended business income, just like a commercial property policy attached. So I can either now buy it through commercial property or I buy it through the business auto policy. But I need to ask my companies if they'll offer it, or I need to ask them if they're offering that new commercial property one. Because specialized equipment, that's how they make their money. If it's damaged and they can't operate, there are ways to deal with it. So CA 9906, business interruption coverage. So there you go. Is it time to, it is, see? And, you get business income, extra expense, extended BI, blah, 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 blah. I'll be glad to send you an endorsement. And I don't have time to do this rest of it now. But it's all about towing and email me. So sorry about that. Okay, no, phooey. Oh, jeez. So, you back at home. There you go. Your last little sign in. And then in 15 minutes we start again. Sign in and goodbye.